the government and corporate whores who rob us blind and lock the doors. Lord, I'll offer a great deal if you'll teach us how to heal. Oh, I wish that we could heal. I wish that I could heal. If you help me,
Hi, you guys. Welcome back. This is Richard Sachs. We're on Lost Arts Radio, and we have a great guest tonight that I'll introduce to you in a second here. But this is going to be, in the context of the current virus crisis, and it's pretty well known to everybody that doesn't depend on mainstream media to get their information that it's a bioweapon that was created for a purpose that it's fulfilling right now. Hard for a lot of people to grasp, but that's just a baseline of beginning information, and it's being used as an excuse for a lot of things. Panic, which is really, it's funny in the cartoons and comedies, they say, well, tell me when to panic so I'll know the right time. And the point is, there isn't a good time, no matter what's happening. Fear and panic are not only useless, they're counterproductive. So instead of that, it's better to learn everything we can about what's going on and what might be, safe, harmless, effective countermeasures against it. I certainly won't say treatments because I'm not allowed to say anything medical, nor do I want to do that. I'm not even a medical doctor. But we need, in my opinion, widespread knowledge of harmless and effective alternate models. Most of the medical personnel that I talk to anyway don't seem to ever question what they've memorized and what they think they've learned, but a lot of it, what they think they've learned, they've actually memorized and never questioned. And you hear things like the science on something is settled, and that's an oxymoron, because if it's real science, it even questions itself, questions what it absolutely believes is true, and it keeps doing that indefinitely. Instead of this training that we get from academia a lot that is really arrogance and intimidation and trying to wipe out the questioning that should be the central point of ongoing science. But there are some doctors that remember what real science is, that it questions everything, including their own training, and that Hippocrates, who used to be, his teachings used to be the center of the Hippocratic Oath that's really not used too much anymore, at least around here, that you shouldn't do any harm. I mean, it seems really obvious, but it's clearly forgotten in most of modern medicine now. There are long pages and pages and pages of the harm done by so-called medicines, and there are some doctors that understand that and are looking for things that not only don't hurt you, but actually make you recover from whatever you're trying to deal with. It's not always appreciated, to say the least, but it really should be. And so our guest is one of those people who's coming to us from outside the country, and we'll let him say where that is. And I want him to introduce himself to the degree that he feels comfortable with, in harmony with the security issues that we may have. And he's got some really important stuff to share. So welcome, and nice to see you again, Dr. Bill. Thanks for giving us the time.
Great. Pleasure to be here, Richard.
Yeah.
And as just as a frame of reference, and to let you know that I have a real personal experience with the coronavirus, because I think I've had the coronavirus. I think my wife has had it. I think her friends have had it. And I'm coming to you from China, where I've lived for many years. And I'm at, I'm not at the epicenter in Wuhan, but it seems that this virus is so transmissible and infectious that very quickly, way before anybody realized it, it was in the wild and out, and people were being exposed to it. So in any event, my wife had what she thought was a cold for about 2 weeks, and a couple of her friends who she plays badminton with also had a cold. And I had to look back after she got over her cold, and I had a couple of days where I had a little bit of a cough, non-productive cough, but that was the extent just for a couple of days. I think that's what the coronavirus was like for me. Now,
Sure.
the reason that I feel that it's very probable that I had it is because she got a phone call about a week ago, and it turned out that one of the people that she'd been playing this badminton with had symptoms of weakness or fatigue and trouble breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And then she didn't hear from her for about a month, but it turned out that she was calling her from the intensive care unit. And it turns out that her husband was also admitted to the intensive care unit. Well,
Wow.
I shouldn't say that he admitted to the hospital as well. So I'm pretty sure that, this is all part of it. Now, I haven't been tested because I haven't had any reason to be tested. But anyway, I'm very familiar with the what's happened in China. Been following it very closely, and my feeling is that about 2 weeks ago, when they announced that things were going to open up somewhat, and they really were going to kind of go back to work because it was critical for China to get back to work because the economy was basically imploding otherwise. So people started traveling, they started relaxing the restrictions, and people started getting back to work. And I was afraid that if it might have been premature, because if you had large numbers of people that hadn't been exposed to the virus, had no immunity, that it could be a whole other wave of people getting the virus again. But that has not proved to be the case. Every day I see more and more people marching up to work, most of them wearing masks, but they're back at work, and there has not been any big bump or even a small bump that I can tell that people where you have the virus kind of being introduced to this new population of susceptible individuals. That hasn't happened at all. So by the experience of China that I'm seeing firsthand is that this virus is absolutely impossible to stop spreading into virtually everybody. It's that transmissible, that infectious. But for the vast majority of people, it's going to be a non-event. Now, sadly, there are going to be some people that, for whatever reason, age, debility, in China, there's a huge amount of smoking, so their lungs are compromised to begin with. So, those people, as you get older, their immune system compromised, people who've been on chemotherapy or any number of other medical problems that can cause the immunity to be reduced, they're more susceptible, and I think it hits them hard, and it can really, it can be lethal in a certain amount. I think that the percentages of what you read about being 1% of the people that get coronavirus being killed by it, it's an enormous exaggeration, because it really isn't taking into account all the people that have had it that aren't included in the quote of people that have had it and haven't been tested, and there hasn't been any reason to test it. So anyway, that's the experience of China. Sitting here at ground zero is that this whole thing, which is sweeping the U.S. now, from what I can tell, in terms of the reaction and the panic and panic buying and store shelves and people sequestering themselves and self-quarantining and being really almost worried to death, that this whole thing is going to run through the system within 2 months, regardless of what anybody does. And it's going to, there are going to be a lot of people that get sick from it, because if you start out with 350 million people, even if it's 1/10 of 1% that have serious problems, That's a significant number.
All right.
And I think the strategy in retrospect, and I think the strategy moving forward was for China, and I think it is for the U.S., is that they're trying to prevent a mass exposure and mass infection occurring throughout the population, because then all the people that were susceptible would require care, and that would that could overload the system. But if you have it kind of released, and some people gradually over a month or two's time get it, and a certain percentage are affected and need more extensive medical care, then the medical system is going to be able to handle it better. And that's, time will tell, but that's absolutely been the experience in China. And now the trucks are running, the buses are running, people are, going about their business, going to work with a mask. But truthfully, I think the masks are, they're a salve that's psychological more than really being effective.
Mm-hmm.
That's in my personal opinion. But if that makes people feel good, and I think that helps, that's fine.
Well, what I had heard is the N95 masks have a typical opening of 5 microns, and the virus is 1 micron. So that gives some kind of a hint that you're correct.
Case in point. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's the reality on the ground here. But the reason that I've been particularly interested in the kind of following things, in addition to being potentially personally involved, and at first I think my reaction was being quite concerned, and what this is going to do, because it really wasn't, when it first started, the full lethality or the amount of symptoms or how deadly it wasn't really known at that time. You'd see pictures of people dropping on the streets like flies, and if that was really the virulence of the virus, then there's a lot of reason to worry. But that hasn't been the case, and my experience is that it's literally, in my case, it was a non-event. It was hardly noticeable, and I think that's going to be the case for most people. But as I say, we'll find out. But
I think
going back to kind of why we're how I've come to your attention is that in the course of a project that I've been doing that has to do with the enhancement of a natural process in the body's defenses. And that it started out over a decade ago. It has to do with my late wife developed breast cancer, and we were looking for a non-toxic treatment for her. She had many friends who had surgery, chemo, radiation, mm-hmm. and it was a very toxic path that they chose, and very not only disfiguring, but excruciatingly painful, and their quality of life was reduced to really almost welcome death at the end. So, she didn't want to go down that path. So I started looking, being a physician, and thinking about what we might be able to do that would be helpful without, aside from that, the typical legacy treatments, which are obviously quite severe, expensive, and debilitating. So one of the things that I recalled from my past training and past practice was an associate who was an ENT doctor, and he needed a place to put a so-called yellow dye laser for a project that he was doing with a private company who had a new technology which they called photodynamic therapy, or PDT. And this was about a $200,000 laser, and this was nearly 20 years ago. And I had space in my office, and he was adjacent. So in the course of having the laser that he could have access to easily, he explained this new therapy. And in his description, the way he described it, is that the patient was administered this medicine, and in this case, it was called, the name is called etiopurpurin, or Perletin, and it was made by Miravant company, pharmaceutical company, or what their exact name was.
Are you describing were you in the U.S. at this time or in China?
I was in the U.S. at that time,
Okay.
and he was doing a study, an approved study, where people were given this medicine and then they used the laser. So the technology involves a two-step process. The medicine is given, and then interestingly and sort of amazingly and almost miraculously, the medicine, knows, but the medicine concentrates in the cancer that was the problem area where he needed that he wanted to treat. So it concentrates there and is basically really not present to much of an extent elsewhere, which seems sort of miraculous to me. I mean, it almost beggared belief that you have a medicine that somehow finds the cancer like that and sticks to it. And then the unique property of this type of medicine is that it's light sensitive. So when you apply, and there are certain wavelengths that this medicine is particularly sensitive to. It's called the peak of activation. So when you apply the wavelength of light that this medicine is particularly sensitive to, there's a reaction takes place, and electrons are generated. That in turn causes a reaction with oxygen. It creates a highly oxidative form of oxygen called singlet oxygen, which, because this medicine is concentrated in the cancer, it basically oxidizes the cells in there and either damages them, destroys them, or damages them enough to where they go to something called it's like a programmed death. They go ahead and live it out, and they don't multiply, and it's like a programmed death.
It sounds almost like a safer form of what's called IPT. I don't know if you've heard of it, insulin potentiated therapy. And what they do is they give some sugar, as I understand it, to the patient, and it goes to the cancer cells because they like sugar and they eat it faster than normal cells. And at least that's what they see on the pictures they're getting. And then they give poison, chemotherapy, and it goes primarily to the cancer cells, and they're able to give less, but it's still extremely toxic and not a health food. So what you're talking about is what that would like to be, I think.
Without the toxicity.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the ENT field, so it was interesting, but it really wasn't relevant to my practice, and I was busy doing some other interesting things, in the field that I was in. But I did remember when my wife had this problem, so I started investigating this photodynamic therapy. And what I discovered was that indeed this technology had progressed. There were some approved agents available. One in particular in the U.S. it's about 30 years old now, but that's available. But there were a lot of newer agents which were had much more advantages and fewer disadvantages compared to this very, very, what I consider very outmoded and obsolete medicine, which is really the only one approved for use in the U.S. And the problem with that older medicine is that even though it sticks to cancer cells and is approved for certain types of cancer in the U.S., it made people light sensitive to the extent that they needed to sequester themselves in the darkness, or couldn't be really exposed to sunlight for something like 2 to 3 weeks. So obviously that's a huge disadvantage, even if it helps. But if you have to be in a dark room for 3 weeks, that's a pretty big burden. And the newer medicines, which were available elsewhere, did not have this light sensitivity, and they were more selective, less toxic in terms of testing, and they produce more singular oxygen. You know, a lot of the factors that go into what makes one of these medicines really good. And there's another thing that's quite significant, and that is that the wavelength that these medicines are activated. It turns out that if you can find one that has these favorable qualities, attributes, but is activated at a higher wavelength, say in the 750. The one that's approved is activated about 630 nanometers, and that's in the kind of the lower red range. Mm-hmm. Now, if you can find one, and they are available that have all the benefits, but if they're activated in the 750 to 800 range, then you get, rather than a fairly shallow depth of penetration, you know, obviously if you shine a red light, it doesn't go all the way through you. But if you find beyond about 700 nanometers, things become invisible. It's the infrared. But infrared penetrates much more deeply into the body. Mm-hmm. So what the significance of that is that even if you have say use this kind of obsolete one, it's called photofrin, that's, you know, it goes throughout the body and it sticks to cancers. But if the cancers are deep in the body, you really can't activate it with the red light that's going to cause the second part of this two-step process and cause the damage to the cancer. Mm-hmm. The light doesn't penetrate there. You can use a longer wavelength penetrating light, which obviously you have to match it up with a sensitizer that will react, you know, on the cancer and get the effect that you want. So, that was kind of a stumbling block. But anyway, it turns out that the greatest variety of these photodynamic agents was in Russia. And they have a number, you know, most of the types that they have approved in the US, but they had some additional ones. So in the course of things, I was working with the clinic as a kind of an advisor and researcher, R&D, and I was able to introduce some of these more advanced, deeper penetrating, more effective, less photosensitizing medicines to this clinic. And also, the Russians also have some very interesting ways to apply light. Rather than using very expensive lasers, it turns out that you can use LED lights and they work quite well. Mm. So, and the other thing that they had, and the very interesting part, and the beauty of this technology, even though it sounds sort of magical and a little preposterous to some people, that, you know, you've got a medicine that doesn't help. You're saying it sticks to cancer cells. Well, that sounds good, but I mean, how do you know? But the beauty of this technology is that in the course of being activated, this molecule, in the course of being activated by the energy to create the effect that you want in cancer cells and other things that I'll mention later, that in addition to that, in the course of that, it fluoresces. So it actually glows. When you add light to a cancer tumor, and you shine a light on it, it starts glowing. So in a way, that's kind of proof positive that the medicine is concentrated and it's where you want it. And it actually, that is what's happening.
Okay. So even in the total darkness of the interior of the body, it becomes a light source when it's activated.
Well, if it's activated, it'll produce fluorescent light, but that may not be able to get out of the body unless it's a little bit more superficial, because you have a limitation there on the wavelength of light coming out.
Right.
If it's closer to the surface, like in the breast or other areas,
right, you
can actually, and I'll have this on the website, you actually can go around and you can see where the cancer is, because it's glowing there and here in real time, you can see where the cancer is. And this is a harmless process. It's an amazing diagnostic tool, not being used. So anyway, the website that I just started putting up a few days ago, but it's called, our company is called Photosonics, PHOTOSONX.com. And if you go to that site, on the home page, I just put it up yesterday, but you'll see right on the front page examples of how this medicine glows and concentrates in the tumor. You see pictures of it, so it's a well-established fact that this is what happened.
Are there any videos on YouTube or anything like that?
I'll embed some videos of this process that I took so people can see that. But I think YouTube generally bans or prohibits most anything having to do with medicine or medical stuff. And if people try to do YouTube videos, they'll either ban them or actually document and demonetize them.
Yeah, if it's toxic, they don't have any problem, but if it's natural, you're right. That probably happen.
So the other interesting thing is that, and this is, I think is probably important for your listeners to sort of take on board, is that what I'm talking about here in this so-called medicine, which is a photosensitizer, it's sensitive to light. This is just an enhancement of a natural process. Our body, and this is, virtually unappreciated by the vast majority of the people, is that our bodies, just like plants produce chlorophyll, which is light sensitive, and they use that to harvest the CO2, break off the CO2 to make their structure, and it gives off oxygen. We have developed sort of an analogous biochemical process. It's one of the pathways where we use the building blocks, and we make light sensitive molecules as well. So just that concept probably seems foreign to most people. Our own body produces light sensitive materials, and it's a natural process. Now the question is, why does the body do that? Why would the body create light sensitive molecules? And that is because, again, it's incredibly unappreciated, and I didn't appreciate it, in all my training as a physician. That concept was never mentioned, no mention, no knowledge, no exposure to it whatsoever. And I'm pretty sure most people have no concept of that.
Right.
But so the reason I've got a book that I've mentioned to you. It's called The Unified Theory of Health and Healing. And by what's the unified theory is that the body has developed, baked into our DNA, a process where we produce light sensitive molecules. And the basic building block is something called aminolevulinic acid, ALA. And if you put a number of those together, it forms a ring. And the thing that forms is called PP9, protoporphyrin 9. And that's very light sensitive. So what these light sensitive molecules do is they circulate around, and the body this is probably as important or more important than our so-called immune system, is this process of using light-sensitive molecules to stick to all the bad things that the body generally comes into contact with. So what are the things that really affect a person's health? They're bacteria, viruses, many different types of viruses, fungi infections, abnormal cells, mutated cells that turn into cancer growths, either malignant or benign. Abnormal new vessels. So it turns out that these naturally produced light-sensitive molecules stick to all of those things I just mentioned. Now again, this sounds, when I first sort of started appreciating this, you're thinking, wow, what's going on here? Why does the medicine, the PDT agents, the sensitizers, they stick to all of these different invaders and abnormal situations in the body. They stick to all of those. And you can see it because they fluoresce. And you can see the result of that because if you go to the website and you know it'll all be there. It's not quite built yet, but you see that this technology is one of the most effective broad spectrum antivirals that exists right now. So it's effective against HIV. It's effective against human papillomavirus, which is causal in cervical cancer and a lot of terrible throat cancers and whatnot. It's effective with herpes simplex, with genital herpes, and all those problems, and most other types of viruses. I don't think it's an accident that this happens. I think this is, these are enhanced molecules that are kind of more powerful than maybe what the body is producing. But in and of itself, the body produces these light-sensitive molecules. And I'll give you 3 examples of how this is demonstrated through the use of fluorescence. And there's a phenomena called autofluorescence. And if you shine the right wavelength that activates these porphyrin molecules that the body's produced, if you shine that on essentially virtually any cancer, it will glow, it will fluoresce. So they call that autofluorescence. And there's even an FDA-approved camera where you can go and you can use this autofluorescence as a form of diagnosis.
Inside the body, right?
Inside the body. Like if you, say if you had lung cancer, you could use this special technology called autofluorescence to see where the cancer is in the bronchi.
Okay, so let me see if I understand one point correctly. And that is that the body is producing some kind of a substance by itself with no therapy that will go stick on pathogens or cancer conglomerates, basically, that could turn into tumors and things. And when light hits it, that enables it to dissolve what it sticks onto.
Yeah.
But if it's deep inside the body, where does nature assume that the light's coming from to activate?
Well, I'm not sure it assumes that, but it, in and of itself, if people are getting a lot more light in their natural state, people, obviously we're in a more equatorial region. You really go back in the history of our origin.
Right.
And lots of light.
I mean, I agree that we're designed to have a lot of light on our skin all the time. But what I'm asking is, how does that transmit to the deep internal sensitive material that's waiting to be activated?
Well, I can't answer that entirely, but I can tell you that normally this process of activation and the singular oxygen creation, that happens in milliseconds. These molecules get activated, they create the singular oxygen and drop back down to another shell and give off the light. It just, it's a very small area that it occurs in, and it happens very quickly. Now that's one way that the molecules are activated. There's another way when these molecules go to this higher energy state, that they don't immediately drop back down into their kind of more stable comfortable area. It takes much longer for them to drop back down. So in a way, that may be one of the ways in which the body uses the circulation of these molecules, because it's not as if every molecule of sensitizer totally sticks to the cancer cells. There's always a dynamic. Some are going in the cell and some are going out. It's just that there's more of a trap door in the cancer cell because it's, I might as well go into it now. The reason that generally accepted, or it's observed, that the reason these medicines stick, either go in cancer cells, stick to viruses, bacteria, etc., is because they're negatively charged. They're more acid. So it's almost like a little magnet, negatively magnet, that these molecules stick to.
Okay.
And that's the evidence for that is, there was a fellow named Otto Warburg in the 1930s. He got the Nobel Prize when he discovered that there's a basic difference between so-called normal cells and cancer cells. And that has to do with the fact that cancer cells, their metabolism is based more on a lactic acid-based metabolism. It's much more acid than a normal cell. They got the Nobel Prize for that. If you look at viruses, as most people know, they're either RNA or DNA viruses. But the RNA means ribonucleic acid. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. The bacteria that this sticks to, if you go to Wikipedia and you look at it, you'll see it's got a coating of glycolic acid. So that's kind of how the body, the bad guys, the bad invaders, the pathogens, and the abnormal cells, they share a common property of being negatively charged. Like the mitochondria inside a cancer cell can be like 300 times as negatively charged as other types of mitochondria elsewhere. So they're very powerful attraction for these molecules. So let's see, where was I? Anyway, the activation can be, there are three types of when you activate it. There can be this very quick reaction. It can be delayed one. So if the molecules are circulating around, even if it's a small portion of them that don't immediately drop back down, if they circulate around and they get stuck to a cancer cell, it's not as effective, but it is effective because at some point they'll drop back down. They'll create the single oxygen, they'll fluoresce, and they'll be damaging to even deeper structures. Now, obviously, it would be to everyone's advantage if you had a deeply penetrating energy, so you didn't have to rely on this, maybe a tiny phenomena of the longer term, the battery effect of putting the charge into these molecules. If you had something where you didn't have to wait on that, you could just send the energy right down and activate the molecules.
Right.
And up until very recently, that hasn't been available. The agent that was activated at a higher wavelength, impossible to get, or if you did get it, and you tried to use it, you'd be put in jail as a physician or prosecuted,
right.
Crucified, whatever.
Yeah,
so
whatever.
That hasn't been available. But the breakthrough, and this is a very absolutely profound effect that's may be the first time people have heard it, but this is going to change the world, in my opinion, because what has been developed by a team here it's an Australian company, but they've been working with some very fantastic cancer specialists here at Open Mind, and they've worked on an ultrasound activated. It's a photosensitizer, but it's also activated by sound. So it's like a photo sono sensitizer, and that's the game changer. suddenly you have the ability to treat at depth all the bad boys, all the pathogens. Give the medicine, it sticks to them, but now you can get at them, and you can get at deep cancers, and you can get at benign tumors and bacteria. So the whole world is going to open up with this technology, and the benefits to future generations is going to be it's kind of unimaginable. I can kind of imagine it because I'm involved in it. But the average person has when it really sinks in how immense this advancement is, it's going to be earth shaking, and they're going to be thrilled with it because it opens up all kinds of possibilities.
Somebody thought of trying a frequency outside of the band that they thought was required, because originally they thought it had to be light, right? And the difference between sound and light is just frequency.
Yeah. Well, the guy that I think really should be credited with starting the whole thing is Dr. Don Burke. And this was a fellow that was sent from a very prestigious medical group in Boston. And they heard about the therapies, this sort of advanced therapy that had all kinds of other possibilities. And this was about 15 years ago. He came and looked at what we were doing and thought that it was, pretty amazing, then he went back, and I kind of lost contact with him. But what he did was he came up through the resources that he had, which are quite amazing in the Boston area medically. Is that he came up with a photosensitizer that was also ultrasound, was sound sensitive, and unfortunately. That a lot of his work was kind of lost, but enough it was lingered so that the group here who he had been working with and sort of working with him, they picked up the pieces and have reconstructed that as best they could. They've gone through 50 iterations, 50 different types of agents trying to recreate this best one that Dr. Burke had developed. And they've come up with one that works very well, and they're offering that treatment. And I've had the treatment, and so I speak from direct experience that I can describe it, but I can tell you that this is, it's a non-toxic treatment, but, it'll be all on the website, but, they have studies that were done with the one that's most relevant for what's going on now is their experience with, I think it's 25 or 30 people with far advanced lung cancer. So here we're talking about people that by any other measure would be given the equivalent of a death sentence, lung cancer, because it involves all the critical structures around it. It's right in the heart, literally the heart of things, all around the heart, vessels, the aorta, all the major pulmonary veins, arteries, etc. So it's all sort of commingled with the most essential nerves and vessels that there are in the body, maybe aside from the brain. So anyway, they've had, very, very positive effects at depth using this therapy. And there's absolutely no way that any of the traditional PDT agents, would show any effect on lung cancer like that.
And this is in China? This has been done in China, you said?
It is being done in China. And on the website, it's photosonics.com.
Yeah.
SONX, photosonx.com website. If you look under SPDT, for photodynamic therapy, you can read about it, and down at the not too far in, it'll have like an online brochure, and it goes into depth about it. But I've been through the treatment, and one of the things that I showed you is that it works for benign conditions too, which is a medical first. There's no way that anybody would be using the toxic chemotherapy agents. I'm not even sure how effective they would be for benign tumors, ones that aren't at risk in your body's not going to kill anybody, or hopefully, but there are the instance that I was pointing out was so-called enlarged prostate or benign prostatic hypertrophy, and there are tens of thousands of procedures done in the U.S., surgical procedures that have severe complications and side effects like impotence and incontinence and severe infections, and they're hugely expensive. It's basically the surgery is what's on offer for this. There's some kind of, temporary major sort of drugs which have their own set of complications, but the treatment is surgical. But here we're talking about a painless, quick, effective treatment for benign prostatic hypertrophy or enlarged prostate, with which most men, as they get older, have that problem. So just that alone is an incredible advance. I'm not sure how urologists will feel about it, because their income, if this were available, would probably be reduced by 2/3. Their income probably be 1/3 of what it is if that surgery is taken out of the equation. So, and that's kind of the problem, that this technology is going to be very threatening to people doing it the old way, because this has so many possibilities for treating so many things, because it's part of what the body has evolved over millions and millions of years. The lower animals, this dynamic all holds true for them too, lower mammals, etc. So, ones that evolved way beyond people did. So this dynamic has been baked in. It's part of our system. But as we start to appreciate it and take advantage of it, it's like going to be the golden age of medicine and the golden age of health. People can be, well, imagine, and I feel that I've had the benefit of it, but imagine if you could take something that's a chlorophyll-based medicine, totally non-toxic, and I'll give you the toxicity in just a moment, totally non-toxic, and you do, basically get in a bath and have ultrasound energize all those molecules that have stuck to all the kind of the crud that's built up in your system over however many years you're alive, even cholesterol plaques and things like that, but any viruses, benign growths, cancer, etc. If you could do this, and it's like a rejuvenation experience. You're kind of literally cleansing a lot of the bad stuff that's collected, or mutant cells, etc. That if left unchecked would gradually cause all the problems that we have now. But imagine if that is readily available in the future. It's how could you wish for anything better than that? But that's what's basically, and I'm sure it's going to get better and better. But that's what we're talking about here.
Let me ask you one quick question to interject into all that, and that is that you explained that it's built into the body, and the body actually has a sensitizer that it uses, and it sticks on pathogens and tumors and things like that, and is supposed to get light from somewhere, maybe transduced into something else from the light that hits the skin from the sun. What happened? How come that system is not taking care of it?
Well, if you go to studies like the China study, if I can think of the guy's name who did that, that's like the largest study going in terms of health and diet and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah. And if people are, this goes back a ways. It's not the case for China now, but you go before, and their diet, there's virtually no dairy cows in China. Many factories now but that's also very recent. But people they didn't eat or drink a lot of dairy products. In fact, they have lactose intolerance. They haven't developed kind of the resistance to that, so that they didn't develop that. So, but mostly whole food based, rice, carbohydrates, and lots of exercise, agrarian society, and being out in the sun. And they had very few cases, of heart disease or cancer or anything else. And if you go to Africa, there was I can't remember the guy's name, but he was an early guy in Africa, and he noticed that there was virtually zero prostate cancer there, and zero heart disease. Heart attacks were virtually unheard of. So people in their more natural state eating lots of veggies, and what's in veggies? Chlorophyll. So, in terms of bowel cancer and cancer in general and heart disease, it's at a very low level. There are obviously some terrible pathogens in Africa that pose a problem. But there again, it could well be that this technology is going to revolutionize that too. So if the best way, if people want to not take what I'm saying as that's what I'm saying, but if they want to have peer-reviewed studies, and they go to the site PubMed, which is the U.S. government's medical library archives, where all the journal articles are archived and can be searched there. And you type in photodynamic therapy and malaria, or photodynamic therapy, or HIV, or whatever, you'll start to see these scientific articles. Now, a lot of them, a lot of very technical articles, but they have a summary there, so you can pretty quickly see that these are effective against just what I've said. In fact, this technology is used to cleanse the blood of HIV viruses in blood bank systems. So, I know it sounds preposterous that it's effective against HIV, but it is, and it's being used to cleanse their blood supply.
So and it's been around for 15 years since Don Burke did his work?
Well, that's for the solar dynamic therapy. The photodynamic therapy probably goes back over 100 years. And that goes back to a fellow named, I think his name is George Pinson. And he also got the Nobel Prize for a light therapy for cutaneous tuberculosis. And the tuberculosis germ is so-called an acid-fast bacillus. So it's a very powerful, it takes up for an acid stain, but acid things, it's very powerful negatively charged bacteria. So I didn't mention two other ways that you could sort of corroborate what I'm saying about the body's natural use of these light-sensitive substances to stick to bad things. Now, the second one would be psoriasis. Now, the problem with psoriasis is that the upper layers of the skin the cells there, they're multiplying at about 300% of normal, about 3 times the amount of growth in that area as what we call normal skin. And that's the reason it's thicker, and you have all this shedding off because it's just shedding skin. It's like in hyperdrive. So that's not a cancerous condition. It's a kind of a hereditary thing. But it's something that's enough akin to this out of control mechanism that's going on with cancer so that it too, if you look at, and I'll have this on, I haven't got it yet, but I'll have it on the website showing this.
Okay.
If you could Google fluorescence or autofluorescence of psoriasis, you'll find pictures there where it's fluorescing. And that's not from any medicine that's been given. That's the body's own. The general category of these light-sensitive compounds is the porphyrins, porphyrins, porphyrins. That's the general category. So it's, and that's why this early precursor to porphyrins called the protoporphyrin 9, like the beginning stages, a very light-sensitive molecule. So anyway, so it sticks to psoriasis. It sticks to, it actually, excuse me, the problem with acne is very much related to a bacterial infection as children go from being children to adolescent. A lot of hormones start circulating around, a lot of secondary sex characteristics start occurring, and more oil production. And this oil is a great source of food for these. It's called P. acne. So there's a certain type of acne bacteria that just thrive in these oily, down in the oil glands and down in the sweat glands and the hair follicles. And they start causing inflammation, and that's what acne is. Well, just like the cancer cells pick up these light-sensitive molecules and the autofluoresce, just like the psoriasis autofluoresces, these porphyrins the body produces also, because they're glycolic acid shell-toothed, they also pick that up. So if you shine a red light on that, you don't have to add any medicine. If you just shine a red light, it'll start killing all of these bacteria.
By the same process, too, that you're talking.
Same, but obviously they're sort of superficial, so it works very well.
Okay.
And that's why if you're indoors, if you're a kid, adolescent, eating French fries and, no veggies,
right,
and you're up north and you're inside, playing video games or whatever, and you're not getting much sunlight, your acne goes, through the roof. Where on the other hand, in the summertime, if people are out and have a better, more green veggies and yellow vegetables, etc., the pigmented parts of the plant, they're eating more of that, then their acne gets a lot better, and the psoriasis gets a lot better. So the psoriasis and acne, both in the summertime, if you ask people who have both those problems or either one individually, they'll tell you that in summertime it's a lot better. But in the wintertime, it's terrible. The acne gets worse. And this is all part of this kind of natural mechanism that the body uses to combat these various infections. Now the general category of this, the application of this technology to pathogens, and that has a whole separate name. It's called PACT, P-A-C-T. So that's photodynamic antimicrobial chemotherapy. Now it's not the toxic chemotherapy that we normally associate with chemotherapy. This just means it's a chemical therapy using these sensitizer chemicals. So anyway, that's what they call it.
Okay.
So in that general category, the PACT, that's something that I think is also going to have an amazing transformation in terms of possibility. And the first is the coronavirus. So obviously that's at the forefront of everybody's mind at this point.
Right.
Just in terms of, older people, they're worried about their survival. So the problem is that at this time, if you went to the doctor and you said, I think I have coronavirus, do you have any medicine to treat this? They say, no.
Well, unless they give you AIDS drugs or, really powerful antibiotics like that.
Yeah, that's remdesivir or a few of the other ones, but they're not going to give you that either. I mean, that's even that isn't really approved for that. And I don't know. I don't know if I sent you. If you look on Wikipedia from the one that's might show some help in that regard for one patient. So they're doing some tests in China. If you look at the synthesis of that, it is like something from outer space. The complicated the synthesis of that medicine, it must cost a fortune. I can't imagine. It might cost $20,000 per treatment.
Yeah, I mean, and it's got a list of what else it does to you also.
I haven't gone into that. I didn't get much past that. And it's only been shown in that one patient, but
right.
In any event. So the question is, if this therapy, this is kind of my rationale for what we're proceeding to do. My rationale for the coronavirus, here you have a virus, just like the other viruses this has been shown to be very effective against. It's a respiratory virus. And this medicine in China, the typical routine way that they administer the medicine, because it's convenient, doesn't require sticking stuff in your veins or IVs or anything like that, is to have people breathe the agent. So it's given by inhalation.
Okay.
So, and it's routinely been done. So you've got this medicine that category, it's called chlorin E6, that category of medicines is tweaked to where it's especially sound sensitive in addition to light sensitive. Mm-hmm. But the same category, chlorin E6, has been shown to be very non-toxic. You give it right directly to the target organ of the coronavirus respiratory virus. You have a way to, once it's gone there and it'll stick to it. If it acts the same way it does to all the other viruses, it'll stick to that virus because that virus is an RNA virus, or ribonucleic acid. So it's got all the dynamics just like any other virus. It'll stick to it because of this negatively charged structure that it has.
Is this being done in China right now?
This treatment is being done. That's the treatment that I didn't have it for coronavirus. I had the exact same treatment that we would like to have tested to see if it's effective against coronavirus. I had the exact same treatment. I took the same medicine, breathed it in. I had the light and ultrasound. And they've done the same treatment for cancer patients. They have a whole series of that with beneficial results that show that if you have this medicine, you give it by inhalation, which is shown to be unbelievably safe, or it's been done it's being done, and it's effective. It sticks to the stuff that it sticks to, cancer, viruses. In the case of lung cancer patients, it sticks to the lung cancer, and with the same thing that you're doing now, the ultrasound bath and the light, it's very effective at activating the agent at depth. So it doesn't take too much of a stretch to think, let's see, now you've got this virus that's just, here you've got an agent. It's effective against a whole range of virtually every virus you can think of.
Yeah.
You've got a way to deliver it to where the problem is. You've got a treatment that you've shown that can activate it at depth, and it's totally harmless. Why wouldn't you give that a try?
Well, so have you suggested this in China where you're living right now?
Well, what I've done is there's an agency that was set up by President Trump in 2018. And let's see if I can think of the name. It's called the Bioterrorism. Can't think of what A is for. Research and Development Agency. And their writ is to kind of let the shields down in terms of a lot of the regulations or whatever. They're kind of open. Is there anything out there that will be effective against bioterrorism? Weaponized viruses or whatever else. Anthrax, whatever. And viral pandemics, etc. So they have an agency specifically set up to receive submissions for people that think they have a possible treatment or possible answers. And there are different categories. They have one for diagnosis, for treatment, vaccines, and then other categories. So we've applied under the therapeutic division with our case. Now we've submitted that, and the phone's been very quiet. We haven't gotten any response back whatsoever.
And how long is it? How long ago did you apply?
That's about 3 weeks ago, but we did get, right after we applied, we got kind of a form letter saying, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for applying. Right.
But after that, nothing.
Okay.
But we do, I will probably fine to just mention this. My brother, who lives in Illinois, has, we've written, emailed or whatever to the senator, Senator Durbin. Haven't heard a thing back from him. This was a week ago. And we've also just yesterday delivered the package to the brother of Congressman Dan Bost. Now, Dan Bost is a congressman from that district in Illinois, and I think President Trump actually flew his jet in and gave a big rally for Mike Bost prior to the midterm elections. So this is he's not somebody that Trump doesn't know. I mean, he did a thing supporting him, a rally there in Southern Illinois for Mike Bost. So Mike Bost, we're following up on it, but Mike Bost he's got the information that gives our submission 500-word summary. He's got a whole list of all the PubMed established articles, 15 or so, showing how this technology is effective against all these viruses. And we have a deck stack presentation as part of that. Now, that's all with the congressman who's personal friends with, acquaintance friends with President Trump. So it's hard to imagine that somebody back there wouldn't read it and see that it's all the evidence. And you can read our submission on our site down at the bottom of the home page. There's a thing where it says BARDA submission for effective coronavirus treatment. So if you click on that, you'll see our whole submission with all the evidence that we have. And it's a crushing amount, it's an overwhelming amount of evidence, all hyperlinked to these studies showing how it's effective against viruses. It's from a medicine, and I'll go into the toxicology now. But one of the toxicologies that was done, as part of the requirements for the trial and everything that's being done here in China, is there's something called lethal dose 50 or lethal dose 10. So it's how big a dose you have to give for a little lab animal before it'll kill 50% of them, or kill 10% or 50%.
Right.
So anyway, the test that, and it's all part of the submission. It's got the study and everything that we submitted to BARDA, because obviously the kind of the interest to know where it was toxic enough.
Sure.
The normal therapeutic dose for this medicine is 1 milligram per kilogram of body weight.
Okay.
So on a 70-kilogram man, you take 70 milligrams.
Right.
So what you do in a lab animal is, what fraction of a kilogram that lab animal weighs, you would give him 1 milligram to whatever percentage. So he might be just a fraction of a milligram.
Yeah.
So they gave them the therapeutic dose, and then they gave them 250 milligrams per kilogram.
Okay.
So they gave him 250 times the therapeutic dose and injected it into their belly,
Right.
intraperitoneally. It didn't kill a single one of them. And their weights were essentially the same. And basically, they were unaffected by 250 times the therapeutic dose. And it didn't slow them down, didn't kill anybody, didn't hurt anything. That shows you how non-toxic it is.
If you had...
So, anyways.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the sentence. Okay, so let's say somebody said, oh, the drug companies are really happy, they'll sacrifice their income, this is going to be great. If you had 10 million people that need to be treated, what are the economics of doing that if your system was accepted?
Well, the economics are, what is the synthesis process to produce this medicine?
Okay.
So if you look at the remdesivir, and you can go to Wikipedia on remdesivir and you look down to see how you can't believe it. I mean, it's just staggering. You need to have somebody with a degree in pharmacology just to kind of explain that. But I mean, it's unbelievably complicated and expensive. What we're starting out with, the base material is spirulina, which you can buy that by the barrel.
And you can produce a lot of it quickly too. It grows fast.
Yeah. So that the substrate, the base material is very, very easy to chlorophyll. And there's only a couple steps between chlorophyll, chlorophyllin, a few other steps. They're fairly straightforward to get to the chlorine. And this is chlorine E6. And you have to do a little tweaking on that. But basically, you're starting out with a material that's as big as the world. I mean, the whole world is covered with chlorophyll, and that's the base. And that's I think that's why it's so non-toxic, is because chlorophyll is the very essence of us, because that's what we incorporate into our bodies.
But I'm saying, say you get the material cheaply like that and quickly. What are the economics of getting from, I've got this bunch of chlorophyll, to actually administering it? What kind of facility do you need for that?
Well, you need obviously you want to, say theoretically, that somebody pays attention to how this is absolutely logical. It's not like you'd have to, what are the steps to approve a drug if they want to be sure it's safe? You do test it on the virus, and that can be done in days.
Right.
Basically, what you do is you take the medicine and the virus in culture, and you add different concentrations of the medicine, and you add different concentrations of light, all separate kind of little trials.
Sure.
And different amounts of ultrasound. And you probably have a fourth where you have ultrasound plus the light.
Yeah.
And you see what are the parameters. Did it kill the virus at all? And if so, did it was it just the light or just the ultrasound, or was it better with both? And at the least concentration possible, what did it kill the virus? So based upon that, you have some pretty good answers. But if even at very low concentration and with a little light it kills the virus, which is probably going to be the case, you see that it works. You've got a medicine that, the toxicity has already been established. It's in the chlorine 6 category that's been used for decades, various places. It's a medicine that's as we speak in use here, given to patients. No toxic side effects at all. It's activated by ultrasound, because if the virus is in the lungs, obviously, no matter how good the agent is, if you can't activate it,
right,
you're not going to have any effect. But we've got a way that's proven to be effective treating deep structures. So you've got all the elements. You could quickly test it against animal models for the coronavirus, very quickly test it there. And in terms of the human trials, in terms of seeing if it's safe to breathe this medicine, it looks like it's not toxic, but is it safe for the lungs? How will people react? How are they going to react to the light? How are they going to react to the ultrasound? If it already wasn't being done on a daily basis, with all the evidence available, you might say, oh, a lot of stuff we have to do. It could take years to do this. But that's not the case. All we're doing is exactly the same medicine, exactly the same treatment parameters, ultrasound, light, breathing it in. All of that's been done on the so-called human trials already. So there's no issue there. I mean, if they want to do more, they can, but they could just look and see what it's like. And here we're talking about people that are, in the hospital, maybe dying of this, or they got a chance of dying it.
Yeah.
So it's not the usual situation where you have the luxury of a lot of time.
Do we have an idea how long it takes to get the effect that you want by treating somebody? Is it the first day, or do you have to do it repeatedly for a while?
It'll probably be just overnight.
Okay, so it's pretty cheap to apply. You just need the ultrasound and the light, and you can leave them in bed, right, to do the whole thing where they are.
Yeah. Well, now, it obviously has to be a logical progression, and I can understand, they're not going to want to release something that they haven't checked out because their job's at risk, and I mean, that's the main thing, but, even some lives could be at risk. So, but anyway, the primary thing is that they don't want to go outside the protocol, and that's their comfort zone. But the shields are down now, and they've kind of been forced to think about, is there anything out there that's going to work? And there is. So they may not have been expecting this. They may have been expecting the big pharmaceutical guys, and they just allocated $8+ billion
right
to throw at this. So you can be sure that the vaccine category and the antiviral category for these hugely expensive medicines, they're going to be right at the trough. I mean the application process.
Right.
They're going to be right there, gobbling up huge amounts of potential funds, to quote find an answer. And I think that's kind of business as usual. But I think this could come out of the blue. It's kind of, I call it a white swan, not a black swan.
Okay.
But for the pharmaceutical establishment, this may be an event that they're never going to get over being surprised at, because in the past, I think they've been proceeding in huge margins and all this stuff. But you see the implications are, there's huge implications, but one in particular is that, say in a couple of days we can fly the medicine to them and be there the next day.
Mm-hmm.
They could test on the coronavirus, and I'm sure they've got your culture right now doing all. So they just squirt some, air some stuff in a different concentration, hit it with the light, and look at it and see it. Is it, did it kill it? So just in a few days they could tell that. If they want to test against animal models, they could to see if it's effective there. That's fair enough. But truthfully, what are you talking? A couple of weeks?
Yeah, at the most. That industry likes to make, and academia and science in general now likes to make everything extremely complicated and difficult. But really, what you're talking about is very simple. Yeah. And especially if it's not dangerous, it's really hard to justify, decades of testing.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, if you'll pardon the phrase, hopefully it can be done in Trump time.
Sure, it could. It all depends on motivation.
Well, what do you think President Trump's motivation would be if he could come out and say, even if he gives it to guys, get on this, let me know daily what's happening. In the first day or two, it kills the virus, and kills the virus. So he came out and said,
I think his motivation would be to use it immediately, and that's why they'll try to keep it away from him because of that. The issue is the motivation of the people in charge, which is the whole drug network, and they may be less enthusiastic. So it seems to me if you could get it into his hands directly, quickly, without being stopped, or into the general public everywhere, although that's less desirable because they're not in charge. But if you could get it into Trump's hands, like past the people who are blocking this kind of thing, then I think it would be revolutionary.
Well, it is going to be revolutionary, whether we get it in his hands. But I think what we're doing now, we have a shot. If it's delivered to the guy who he personally did a whole event for, flew his jet in and flew an event for him to get this guy elected, it's not like he's a stranger to this guy.
No, that's a good shot.
I'm sure he has the capability of hand walking this to there and saying, deliver this, or I want to give something to him personally. If he understands the importance of this, because what was it like? Something like $1 trillion was wiped out for the stock market and, people's pensions.
Oh, yeah. No, there's no doubt that he would have the motivation. It's can he have enough confidence to realize his advisors are trying to give him misinformation? Because they have great credentials in the conventional world. And they say all the natural stuff is silly, and dangerous.
Well, but you see, this isn't natural. It's based upon a natural principle.
Yeah.
But it's not a so-called
they can say it's not
natural.
that natural. Don't worry,
But I think I have something like 20 different hyperlinks in this submission. And again, people can go to Photosonics and go down to the home page. First of all, they'll look at the pretty picture showing, in white light, and then you add the medicine, and then, it collects there and it glows. And that's just a fraction of the things that are going to be in the book and will be, more in there's a whole section on diagnostics that over the next day or two will fill in. So if people go to that site, they'll see it. It's, it's absolutely, it's right in front of you. How it concentrates there. And anyway, all the hyperlinks are there with the published articles. So it's indisputable how it's effective against these different viruses.
Right.
The worst viruses, most damaging pathogenic viruses around, it's effective against it. But see, in the past, it's been limited because, well, if you think about it, there are some virus infections that are real superficial that, would be appropriate to treat. But the deep viruses, systemic viruses, that's been kind of a no-go zone for the light to activate it. But that's not the case now.
Well, even if you showed, like with skin cancer, right? There's millions of cases of skin cancer, especially with people who don't get enough sun. And they're all being treated by burning it off, freezing it off, all these different things. If you just showed absolutely that would eliminate that industry, right? You could just treat everything simply with this completely harmless protocol. Then it would be obvious that, well, if you got that into the deeper parts of the body, which you happen to know now how to do, then you'd eliminate all the other types that were less superficial. So even the demonstration with the superficial part should take about 10 seconds to understand the other implications once you can get it deeper. I think it's the resistance issue that's going to take most of the strategy to get by. And if you've got somebody who can hand it to Trump and let him actually read it and absorb it, that would be a pretty good quick shot. That can be done.
I can't imagine that he wouldn't see that if all it doesn't even have to have it approved or anything else. If he could just, did it kill the virus or didn't it?
Yeah, it's actually really simple. That's something hard for modern science to understand. Is there something super simple?
The lab result says, it killed the virus. Then how good would it say? I mean, he could, this hyperbole or whatever, but he could come out and say, as BARDA, we've tested something and it looks like we've got something, it's been shown to kill the virus.
Right. And
Very
it's
effective.
totally harmless. There aren't any so-called side effects.
Well, he may not want to go that extra mile because they haven't proven that yet, but he could say that this technology that we've just discovered the application to the coronavirus, is being used, and it's been, at least in the people that's being used on, it's been totally harmless.
Yeah,
So he
exactly.
could qualify.
That's more of testing than a lot of this stuff actually has, even though it's written up, exhaustively.
Absolutely. Now that the important thing, there are a couple other considerations. A vaccine is usually virus specific.
Right.
So it'll only affect a virus if it has a certain characteristics.
And that's if it works.
If it works.
Yeah.
So you're always going to be, any new mutation or anything that comes along, it looks like it's going to be that epidemic. You're always going to be way behind the 8 ball. You're going to be,
Well, yeah, because it mutates anyway. And the problem with the virus is, with the vaccine, is little stuff like, a lot of people get killed when they take it, and you're not ever supposed to know that. And with yours, it doesn't even kill you. Right? It's apparently totally safe. It helps you, right? That's an amazing concept. Medicine that can't kill you, that's amazing.
Well, and it has all these beneficial side effects, so it's pretty amazing. But
Right.
Think about this. If this is allowed to see the light of day, and we'll see, it's going to come. It's just a question of when. You can't keep something like this. Not with the internet and not with coronavirus and all that. But if you think about the longer term consequences, the next thing that comes along, you have medicine available to treat it with immediately.
Right.
It's not like you have to wait to let it
Develop
spread.
something totally different, right?
Well, if you isolate that population and you test them, you've got the person who's sick. If you kind of lock it down, you test everybody for a couple of times to see who's positive for it, and you treat them.
Right.
So they're not going to be carrying it around. They're treated.
Yeah.
And the other thing to think about is that the way this generally could be considered to work is that it's going to break up that virus. It's going to cause that virus to kind of break down into pieces.
Okay.
And those pieces act as an antigen. That's kind of the way a vaccine works. If you have a modified live virus, it stimulates, to the virus, or even little pieces. So if that virus breaks down in a person who's been treated this way, they shouldn't go on to develop the symptoms, or if they have the symptoms, they'll quickly be curtailed. But as the virus breaks down and circulates around, assuming that they have a competent immune system, they'll develop a self-vaccination to it.
At least to that organism, right?
Well, to that virus, yeah.
Right.
But,
I mean,
also,
go ahead.
If you extend that means that the Ebola virus, the hantavirus, all these ones that are out there that there's been no effective thing for, you could take this medicine very quickly, just a matter of days, you can see where it kills that. If it does, you could apply that to these horrendous, high lethality virus epicenters in Africa and other places in the Middle East.
Right.
You could also apply to that and be very easy to test and see. And any subsequent mutation or any militarized biological agent that, who knows what rogue nation might be doing that, you'd have a defense against. So it really, how about just the influenza virus that's killed X number of people in the States this year? It should be effective against that virus too, or you could very easily test to see. Now you have an actual treatment for these virus infections and in susceptible individuals. It would literally be a lifesaver for them too.
Yeah. Well, can't think of any downside at all, except for the fact that there's no downside. So the powers that be might not like it that much. But if you could get past them, I think that, it could happen quickly. So,
Well, I think if there was ever a time when you had kind of burn the swamp down kind of guy at president.
Yeah. No, this is the chance. That's why they want
back
him.
into the wall.
That's why they want him gone, and that's part of the reason this is happening right now, is that they can't afford to risk somebody with human motivation in the presidency. That's unacceptable. And before they carry this through to its ultimate end and blame it on him and get rid of him because of the virus, if this could get to him in time, that could be avoided, seems to me.
In addition to this virus, if he came up with an effective treatment, through his agency, then it also would work for future bioterrorism or otherwise.
Of course, the media will say that terrible president, he's a racist because he's taken away the income of all these poor terrorists and, chemotherapists and stuff like that. But that's expected. I mean, it would still be great, and I don't think all the people would fall for that.
Yeah, and it's an effective, a treatment that's been shown to be effective for cancer. I don't think that would hurt his legacy or reputation.
No, that's the kind of thing he would love to find, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, and I would love to be a part of it.
Yeah, I agree. So we need to do anything we can to facilitate that happening right away, because weeks are important now. The degree of spread that's expected in the U.S. in the next 2 to 3 weeks is supposed to bring it equivalent to beyond where Italy is right now, where everything is shut down, and they're doing draconian quarantine measures in Italy now, and that's expected in the U.S. in a number of weeks. So if it can happen before that, that would really be a good idea if there's a way to do it.
Well, even the perception, even if he says, Bart has come up with something, we've tested it, and it's effective coronavirus, we're quickly, bringing it into
things would get better right away.
And absolutely. Without there's nothing. But I will say this. That's one of the reasons that I think that this type of sensitizer is derived from chlorophyll, and spirulina, generally the chlorophyll source that they use to collect the chlorophyll. Right. So, and I think I mentioned to you before the program started that you can go to PubMed and type in, I think, chlorophyll, or type in spirulina, and type in antiviral. And you should come up with a study, but I'll send you the link to that so you can post it on your site as well. But if people go to that, they'll see very scientifically how spirulina alone is very, very effective as an antiviral. And that's something you could do with full confidence of its safety. I mean, how many millions and millions of people take spirulina every day? It's very safe, very natural, and if it's proven to be effective. Now, one thing that the icing on the cake, and that's something that isn't really proven at this point, but my feeling is that if you took obviously you're not going to have access to a light bed, but if you got the virus, and it could well be that just by taking the spirulina, you'll have virtually no problems. Now that's a speculation. I'm not claiming that, but it's possible, because if you're taking 4 to 6 tablets of spirulina a day, and it may be more or less a non-event for you, even if you are older.
Well, it'd be great to take that and get out in the sun if you could, right?
Well, this spirulina is basically, it's chlorophyll, and we know what the absorption peak of absorption is for chlorophyll. It's got a peak over in the 400 range, and it's got a peak in the, and it's just shy of the mid-range, in the 600 range.
Okay.
And people, they have lights for, they're called grow lights. These lights that are used as grow lights, they're what, have been shown to be wonderful. Those wavelengths that are specific for growing plants, that's what you want to do. That's the light source that you want to use to activate if you're taking spirulina.
So even if you can't get in the sun, you could put that on your skin, basically, right?
You could put this on. I mean, if you get it, you're taking chlorophyll, you put one of these grow lights, on the chest area.
Uh-huh.
The chances are you'll have a benefit from it. Now, I'm not saying that's going to cure you or anything, but just on a theoretical basis, that would give you the best shot at activating the spirulina that has been shown to go around and stick to viruses and kill them.
Yeah. So you could do that now without waiting for any approvals of anything. And the question... Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Get your spirulina and start taking that.
Yeah.
It's an antiviral. That's what you want. This is a virus. You want to take an antiviral. It's going to help you in all these other ways.
So what would happen to a medical doctor in the U.S. who tries to do this therapy on patients now? Is it totally illegal, or what's the situation?
To use the medicine?
Yeah, to do this procedure that you're talking about. Not just the supplement, but the full procedure with ultrasound and everything.
Well, I'm pretty sure that he would quickly be shut down and prosecuted.
Okay,
he would be using an unapproved medicine. Now there are some loopholes, so that if you want to self-medicate and you have something sent in and it's for your own use and it's only like a 2-month supply, there are some sort of loopholes, and not so much a loophole, but a variance that the FDA does allow people to bring in things for their own use, in a limited supply. So it's possible that if this were available, people could bring this and they could self-medicate, but it actually turns out that there is an ultrasound machine that you could buy. You could actually use the ultrasound, it's used for sort of aches and pains, but it's available on Amazon. You can actually use that ultrasound machine to treat yourself as well.
Now, there actually are some cautions with ultrasound. And I know that people have talked about that with respect to unborn babies that are affected negatively by it. But I don't know what the net effect is on adults, if that's of any concern or just insignificant.
If someone were pregnant, just to be on the safe side, I wouldn't recommend it. You don't want to recommend, that.
What about anything? What about people who aren't? Do you think there's any concern at all?
Well, if you think about how many machines of these are sold for aches and pains and ultrasound, it's in the millions.
Yeah.
So the usage is such that there has been no blowback because of adverse effects or complications to my knowledge.
What do they advertise them to be used for on the retail market?
I'm not sure. I think it's probably joint pain or something like that.
Okay.
But if you go to Amazon and look at an ultrasound, you'll see some little machines. I've got one here because I just sort of was checking it out. But
yeah.
It has a little handheld thing. You've got 2 or 3 settings, and it's powerful enough. You put it up to the high setting, well, you can hardly stand it on your skin, so you need to turn it down. So it's plenty powerful. But if you had, anyway, that's potentially a way to self-administer ultrasound. But it's not something I'd recommend at this point for for self-treatment.
But grow lights tend to try to imitate the sun as close as they can, at least in the bands that affect plants. So if you had that plus internal consumption of an approved nutrient, well, it's not approved, but it's not illegal, which is spirulina, that should be pretty safe, I would think, legally to do that for yourself.
I can, for anybody to do that is, in the privacy of your own home. I mean, if you buy some, Amazon will send you out spirulina and you'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
That grow light, you'll be there tomorrow. So
right.
in a way, you kind of, it's kind of but it's not a tinfoil hat statement. I mean, you just go to, and I'll send you the link. You can look at the link.
Okay.
But they actually had lab animals that, if you give this particular virus that they were using, if you didn't give any spirulina, 0 of the animals survived this challenge with the virus. If you gave them, more, then more would survive, all the way up to where 60% of them survived if they had, a little bit higher level of spirulina. So it was a direct correlation between the spirulina and the ability of these lab animals to resist a direct virus insult challenge.
Okay.
Absolutely correlated. It's all in the paper. It's all proven. And, they can anybody can go online and see that spirulina has a whole long list of benefits.
Have they correlated that with dosages at this point?
I haven't, no. But if you go online with YouTube, you'll see where there are some YouTube videos where charitable organizations have gone down into Africa, and they'll there's places down there that have very poor nutrition, and the children are definitely suffering from vitamin and other nutritional deficiencies.
Right.
And they'll start a spirulina growing program. And it's well documented in these things. They'll start giving these children 1 teaspoon of raw spirulina a day.
Right.
And within a month, they're transformed.
Yeah. Now, of course, the best way would be to do it like that. But the dried form still has most of the potency, I would think.
Yeah. And that's because normal plants, they have to have a very thick cellulose wall to compete for sunlight against, guy next to them.
Right.
But the spirulina are just kind of floating in the water. They don't have to compete, so their cell wall is very, very thin. So it's very easy for us to extract the chlorophyll from dried spirulina.
Right.
But any other type of plant, dried food, unless you cook it, we can't digest that cellulose wall. So spirulina is ideal in that.
Even other algae like chlorella, they have to sell it as broken cell wall, and I think spirulina has an advantage that way. It doesn't need it as an exoskeleton or anything. It's just soft, right? Available.
Yeah.
So
it's
all right.
Ideal. It may be the simplest, easiest way to, have sort of a preventative strategy for the coronavirus that's shown to be effective as an antiviral. It's cheap, it's easy, it's safe. But it's a question of why not?
Yeah, it's a great idea. So how does all this correlate with what's going to be in the book?
Well, the book is going to go into, some history, but, going into the various types of photosensitizers. And it's going to go into, have all the papers that are already published of the effectiveness of even using PDT for all these different types, almost every type of cancer you can think of. It doesn't seem to work in my book, in my experience, that well for sort of so-called blood dyscrasias or, leukemias and that sort of thing. But for lymphomas, I think it can be very effective. And it's all of these are shown in the book, which is, I think, good for people to know. It goes into all the different aspects of, viruses, bacteria, fungi, all how that works. And see if cholesterol. It's also helpful for cleaning cholesterol out of the arteries. Seems kind of amazing, but there again, that's something that's deleterious to people's health, and it works against that. The other major effect is going to be that kind of be described. It's how effective it is for abnormal new vessels. For instance, if you look at how many people are obese and have diabetes increasingly around the world. Diabetes is like epidemic proportions, epidemic growth curve at this point.
Right.
So one of the things that happens when people get diabetes is it has ill effects at the back of the retina on the circulation.
Yeah.
So the arteries, they don't get enough. The retina doesn't get enough oxygen because the vessels are damaged. So what happens is the retina starts elaborating some substances that stimulate the growth of new vessels to come in, try to get more oxygen. But when you have these abnormal new vessels form, they're fragile. So, and they're leaky. So very quickly, the retina, they want more oxygen, but in addition to that, you get all this fluid, so that damages the retina, and then they can bleed. So you start getting hemorrhages in the retina, and if they get bad enough, you actually bleed into the vitreous, which is the jelly-like substance inside the eye, and then you can't see at all. So
right.
And then sometimes these vessels will grow up around and into the area where the fluid drains out of the eye, trabecular meshwork, and then you get glaucoma. So all these problems. But you see, with this medicine, you have the possibility. Now, normally the treatment is an expensive round of something called pan-retinal photocoagulation, which is just basically using a laser and kind of burning spots all around the periphery of the retina to reduce the overall need for oxygen. And you're just left with a little island between the optic nerve and the good part macula, the good part of the vision. You're kind of night blind for that. It's expensive. But imagine if this is something that's a possibility. If you were to take a little bit of this medicine, it'll stick to these abnormal new vessels, and maybe even just walking around, it would seal them down selectively, and that would be your treatment. It wouldn't develop this. I think diabetes is like the #1 cause of blindness in older people in the world now. So that's just a small little fraction of the possibilities. But that's I'll be talking about stuff like that in the book. How many older men who are facing this horrendous rotor-rooter job for it's called a TURP, transurethral prosthetic resection, resection of the prostate, TURP. But it's a horrible thing. My grandfather died as a complication for that. It was a long time ago, and it was easy to get infected. Other people in my family have had it. It's terrible. And imagine if, and it's possible. One of the things I'll have on my site, it'll go down into the different indications, but I'll show a streaming video of the effects of this treatment within a week after it was done on somebody who had, problems with, not serious problems, didn't require surgery, but you'll see the effect on that person, within the week after he had the treatment. So it's a non-toxic, non-surgical, with virtually no complications, way to shrink the prostate and eliminate the problematic symptoms of an enlarged prostate. So I think people might be interested in that. And now, see, they don't even know about it now. So I think it may put people to sleep because there's going to be a lot of detail and a lot of there. But it'll have a table of contents. So if you look down, if you've got something of interest, you can either click on that, the PDF file, so it'll click on that, go right to where you want to look at it, see something of interest to you. It has lots of pictures of all the before and after of treatment for cancers. And I think it'll be but it also introduced the concept of this natural process that is totally or nearly totally unappreciated by the public. The fact that we're producing light-sensing molecules that lead to better health and healing.
Well, they don't appreciate it because they never heard of it.
Yeah.
So I think that would be great. Any way to get it, and I think it deserves some thought. You know, the technical stuff is well described, but the exact strategy to get it accepted and approved as fast as possible is really the issue right now, right? Because there's not really a question about the therapy other than all possible applications maybe, but there's enough known about it to start using it right now if it was understood to be acceptable.
It is being used right now. It's just not available to most people, but it is being used now.
Where?
Great results.
Where?
Well, in China, at this one particular clinic, and you know it's a sanctioned trial. The device is approved, and the agent is being fast tracked for approval. But it's being used now to great effect on the most impossible for advanced cases of cancer with very very demonstrable and beneficial effects.
So why do you think it wasn't used in Wuhan right away?
Well, this is the treatment now. The trial is being used for cancer.
And nobody thought that it might be something to try for the virus also? I guess it just didn't occur to them, huh?
It occurred to me, and that's why I'm trying to get it out there.
Right, because they could have avoided.
I don't think it hasn't occurred till I kind of brought up the topic to much of anybody else.
It must be, because they could have avoided some serious unpleasant events in Wuhan if it occurred to them.
I think they're looking for some answers, but truthfully, any kind of older civilization is, the regulations is some sort of pile up. So, China has a lot of protocols and regulations, and so that's all in place. So I think it's actually, believe it or not, more difficult to get something approved in China than it is in the U.S. Some sort of
really? Right. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah. No, I think that's true.
Okay. So we need to work on it in both places, I guess, huh? So we'll start doing that.
My Chinese is not good, so I'm going to leave that to somebody else. But
okay. Your English is pretty good, though. So we should.
Not too bad.
We should do it in America for sure, and then other people would notice.
Yeah.
Okay. So from this whole discussion, what do you think people should remember as a central point to walk away with? Probably one of them is take spirulina as a supplement, right? What else?
I think just to kind of open their mind to this whole new concept of, in addition to the usual immunologic stuff that we think about, that's how we fight infections, our immune system. Mm-hmm. That this whole other aspect of the benefit that the body has developed to produce these light-sensitive substances, it's working in parallel to that without them really even knowing it. And this is based upon green stuff. It's
right.
Porphyrins. But if you eat lots and lots, of green stuff, the way that kind of nature intended, more plant food-based diet, you're gonna really bolster that parallel system that the body has for health and healing.
Isn't it interesting that we're taught that light is dangerous from the sun, and that you have to stay out of it, always wear sunscreen, dark glasses, hats, and as many clothes as possible? So that's kind of guidance as long as you just reverse it, right?
Well, I think people will see that as this becomes accepted, there'll be creams that you put on rather than a sunscreen. You could, which will keep you from burning if you need to keep from being sunburned. There'll be some of this might be a little greenish color or not, if you put that on, it'll stick to all the, it's called actinic damage, the sun damaged areas of the skin that are precancerous and even skin cancers. And just by having nice sunny exposure, you'll treat yourself.
Wow,
And for acne, for sun damage, and the skin will start looking a lot younger too.
Wow, that's a great image. Okay, well, to sign up for pre-orders of your book, because it's not available yet, how do they do that?
If they'll go to photosonics.com, they'll see where one of the categories at the top is the ebook. And if you click on that, it'll tell about it, and there'll be a link where you could go and pre-order it.
Okay.
The advantage of the pre-order is that there's a very well-done chapter, or part of the chapter on skin that was done by Dr. Mark Stringer, and this is quite a few years ago. So it's older, but it kind of goes into the basics, and they can understand it. And that's kind of a preview chapter that they would get at the time they order it. They'll also get a book by a fellow that's kind of an interesting on diabetes, how to use plant-based foods to combat diabetes, and how he did. And the other thing that they'll get is this chapter, or part of this chapter on the coronavirus, where I also go into the benefits. But I think I even have the link to this spirulina science showing, the study showing that it's effective against viruses.
Okay, sounds great.
So photosonics, so light and sound, photosonx.com.
Photosonx.com. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Well, let's see what we can think of to take it to the next step, and we'll stay in close touch. So hold on, and we'll say goodbye in the break here.
Great.
Okay, everybody, there goes Dr. Bill. And remember his upcoming book, The Unified Theory of Health and Healing. And his website, photosonx.com, photosonx.com, where he's going to be updating his work and how this project goes. I certainly think that after talking to him, it sounds exciting to me, and the kind of thing that deserves to be known everywhere. Because, it's got the qualifications as a really good health protocol, because it doesn't hurt or kill anybody. That's a big one right now, because that sets it apart to almost all of modern medicine, or a lot of it anyway. And it also appears to have a wide range of healing effects, which is understandable for anything that is really powerful and works with nature. You would expect it not to be targeted toward one particular condition. In this specialization mentality that we've all been trained for in higher education, things that work with nature tend more often to help everything instead of just one particular condition. And this has that qualification with it. So I would encourage people to listen to this video more than once if you need to pick up details of it. I think the important thing is to get his work and his information known as widely as possible, and it'll really help when the book comes out. He's also got this application in for the new agency that Trump started called BARDA, Bioterrorism Research and Development Agency, BARDA, and we'll see what happens. He's already got the application in there, and if it were all uncompromised people working there, which is extremely unlikely, but if that were true, the first day after somebody had read through his material, which probably takes about an hour or so at the most, he would be invited to come there and demonstrate everything. And he hasn't heard back as of the time of this recording, so we'll see what happens with that. I think the president needs to get this stuff in his hands, along with information on nanosilver, on vitamin C, on the damage done by drug company antivirals, which I don't think would I mean, they can't possibly compete with something that's natural and has no harm to using it. So I think they're just out of the question. They're a big moneymaker, but they're going to hurt a lot of people. I know of had friends back, many years ago that were killed by the AIDS drugs before they were killed by AIDS. I mean, before they would have been killed by AIDS, they were killed by the drugs. And certainly the injections will be in that category too. And I think the danger of the viral epidemic, aside from the virus, is the danger of the treatments. And unfortunately, the president in the U.S. right now tends to believe people who had large companies that he calls great companies, even if they're working for putting out things that are deadly to humans and other life forms like 5G and even any other forms of Wi-Fi. He said nothing at all about geoengineering, which is an immediate threat to all life on Earth and is, in my mind, causing a lot of the climate disruption that then will be blamed on us and used as an excuse to shut down any remaining liberties that we might have. He doesn't understand the damage of the Federal Reserve and so much that he doesn't know. I disagree with the Q people who think, oh, Trump's playing, 300D chess or something. No, he's not. There's a whole bunch of stuff that he obviously does not have a clue on, and he needs to get real information. But the reason that they want him out of office is because his attitude is good. It's his motivation's good. It's nothing like the media says. They can make you or me or anybody look like a monster, and they've done that to the president since he first ran for office. I recommend not being fooled by that. It's very convincing when you don't know about the collusion between all the different parts of the corporate media. But if you understand that all of them are owned by a handful of interconnected global corporations, and you know what their agenda is for the world, which is well underway right now, then it's not hard to understand that the media usually tells you on important issues the opposite of the truth. And I don't think, there's so much of it that the president just doesn't get at this point. But the people who think he's a demon are equally completely misinformed, in my opinion. I've analyzed his character extensively, and the things that he's done make it really obvious. He's trying to do what he can, although he's surrounded by traitors and people that want him drugged and killed, or killed and drugged, whatever comes first, I guess, and misled, and advisors that are traitors. And that's the challenge about getting something like the information of Dr. Bill into his hands. Or it's just as hard getting something like on the real alternative energy that's available now that is nothing like solar and wind. It's so far beyond that stuff. You're not supposed to believe it exists, but it's existed. I agree with Stephen Greer for more than 100 years. And the issue is just this little problem that people who try to come out with it and produce it tend to all just commit suicide, even though they have no interest in committing suicide, in very athletic and creative ways that are not suicide. And that's the issue. That's why we're stuck with toxic technology, and a lot of which the president thinks is just great companies, and he's just naive. He's a really good man, in spite of being made to look like a demon on television. And this is not partisan. I think a lot of the Republican Party is completely criminal, but not him, and not in his intent. Doesn't mean he's perfect or anything. He's compromised in a lot of ways for just being able to do business in New York. But that's not the priority issue. It's that he is really trying to do good for the country. And having anybody who's honestly trying to do good for the country is just so amazing after having people like Bush and Clinton and Obama and Carter. And while Carter had some good motivation, just was a little misinformed as well. But the Bushes and Clinton and Obama and people like that, we're used to people trying to destroy the country and doing pretty well at it. This one is not doing that. And he's not backing 5G and GMOs because he's evil. He's backing them because a lot of smart people think those things are great. and there are different kinds of intelligence. It's not the same as awareness, and somehow you got to get them combined and put common sense and real strategic awareness of what the situation is now, real understanding of the solutions that don't hurt anybody, and that's real medicine. It has no so-called side effects. It just helps you. It's basically something that your body just absorbs, and it helps all kinds of things at once. That's real medicine, and we're supposed to forget about that like it never existed. But it has been used by the people who knew for thousands and thousands of years back before recorded history. And this is an example of somebody coming up with that, and it reminds me of somebody coming up with free and clean energy technology, which exists all over the place, but the people will die who try to bring it out. This is the same kind of situation in my mind. So even if it got into the hands of the president, it would have to go with a protocol and a plan for incredible security, because you can imagine that the dark side, with a lot of really foolish people who are working for it, who don't realize it'll destroy them too, they're going to see this as not a desirable turn of events, right? And you want to be prepared for that. And there has to be a strategy and a plan to overcome it. I mean, all the agencies are corrupt. They'll do testing on this that proves it's poisonous and would have killed everybody, and that the president was a demon for suggesting it. They'll do all kinds of stuff, whatever's necessary. And somebody who understands that has to direct a security team that understands that too. I mean, it's really serious. People who talk about this disappear. Okay, it's not like, watch out for, in case you meet a criminal who's going to attack you. It's not like that. All the power positions are full of those people now. And they're not smart enough to realize that if you work for evil, it's not a belief system or a religious question. It's a reality question. That there are levels of how the universe and creation work that nobody gets away with anything in the end. So however we treat other people, and this is directed at you guys who are monitoring and spying on us in this broadcast, if you work for censorship and a medical system that's gone crazy and is recommending things that kill people all the time, look at Gary Null and Carolyn Dean's paper, Death by Medicine, if you're not real clear on that, or Dissolving Illusions by Suzanne Humphreys, any of these doctors that were brave enough to tell the truth, and there are some. Most of them have been brainwashed and don't even know it anymore. That's the real situation that we're dealing with, and it's not just for health, it's not just for the virus situation, it's for the whole condition of life on this planet. And I think, and it seems like you would agree, that having things go back to what should be normal and everybody being okay would be a really good idea. And the people who don't think that, or are brainwashed into serving the system, they're not at the top evil levels, but they've been brainwashed by their so-called education and the media, and they think they're just saving the world against, all these misinformation sources and stuff. We need a way to like a cold shower to wake those guys up, because life on this planet's going to end at the hands of man, not because what the so-called liberal progressive people say. They're mostly all totally programmed and brainwashed too, and promoting horrible stuff in the name of good causes. And because I say that being a devoted environmentalist since the early 60s at least, but what it's turned into now, just like feminism, is crazy. And the common sense part is gone, and that's not partisan. It's not really, motivated by any nefarious ulterior motives. It's just the things that are good for life need to be brought back. And you guys who are working for the other side need to think about it really carefully, because if you're in a position of power where you can censor, you can promote medicines that'll kill people, you can promote injections that are designed to do the same thing, you can develop bioterrorism weapons like they did with this one, which came from the U.S. and went to China and was sold to them and then released. If you're working in any of that stuff, you may be really smart in other ways, but it's not very smart to do things intentionally that are going to hurt people because you're connected and you don't get away. And if it affects them, it affects us. So really think about it. I mean, there's very little chance that you'll think about anything I'm saying at all. I'm quite aware of that. But in case you might consider it, could be a turning point for your life. And if you're in a position in the negative power structure, you're in a place where you could do a lot of good. And then when your life is over and you look back on it and you see, well, actually, at least I did something at the end that was beneficial. That can turn around your future completely, because our future doesn't end with this lifetime. So just a few outside-the-box thoughts in case you want them. Remember that in case we are not anymore on the popular big programs that you are used to seeing us on, go to brighteon.com, brighteon.com/channel/Lost Arts Radio and subscribe, and we won't be censored over there. So you might want to be a subscriber on there right away before you forget, and follow our main site at lostartsradio.com. Doug has put up a Subscribe Star page for us because we need money. We're not doing the commercials like you're supposed to do, and Subscribe Star is a way to help us stay, keep our work going. And that is subscribestar.com/lostartsradio. There's also donate buttons directly on the website Lost Arts Radio, and also lostartsresearchinstitute.org, our nonprofit. And if you want to get into an environment that's not going to be censored, that's live and interactive every week, and a mutual support system where we can talk openly about any subject you want. We don't do medical advice, nor do I want to. I'm not a medical doctor. But information sharing without restriction or censorship, you can access that via planetaryhealingclub.com, planetaryhealingclub.com. And I'll be there, and Doug will be there every week, live, interactive, and we can talk about issues that you're dealing with and share information related to that. You might find it very valuable. And we're really working to expand that right now. If you're in political office or member of law enforcement or sheriffs, anybody like that, get in touch with us, because we're looking at how the sheriffs can actually help us avoid getting into a real bad situation with medical martial law in this virus situation. And we'd like to be in touch with you. And you can write to us, contact forms on the websites, or richard@lostartsradio.com. You can be in Planetary Healing Club too. You're not excluded. planetaryhealingclub.com, and the live show that we do right after that, which is going to be having a lot of relevant information to current events and relevant history and things like that. And that's at 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on every Saturday afternoon. And hopefully you'll find that valuable too. That's all free. So thanks for sticking with us on this kind of long show with Dr. Bill. I thought it was really worthwhile. We'll see what we can do to help him out. And really appreciate your caring about any of this stuff. It makes you very valuable to the world, and encourage you again to take care of yourself, especially under stress. That's when it's the most important. And it's when almost everybody just lets it go and says, we'll do it later. That way you can stay valuable to the world and make a contribution here during the brief time that we're around. So anyway, nice to be with you, and hopefully see you again next time, and maybe meet you on planetaryhealingclub.com. See you soon.
Introducing Lost Arts Radio on subscribestar.com. Just go to subscribestar.com/lostartsradio to find our rewards program, offering 10 different giving levels starting at just $5 a month. We offer incredible value for any rewards level, from extra monthly interview videos not available publicly to subscription-based Planetary Healing Club videos once, twice, or 3 times a month, to private counseling sessions with Lost Arts Radio host Richard Sachs, to tech help with me, Doug Diamond. We even have one option where you can be the star on Lost Arts Radio as our guest on a specially produced show just for you. We conduct an interview with you and broadcast it to our growing network and listenership. Our Subscribe Star levels are one of a kind and offer great rewards for any budget. Please help support Lost Arts Radio. We can't do it without you. With increasing censorship on many of our channels, we really need your support today to keep doing what we're doing. As Richard says, we're not even at survival level yet. Lost Arts Radio has 3 weekly shows. Lost Arts Radio Live each Saturday night at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, which is a live stream currently on multiple platforms in case we get banned from some of the larger ones. Right now, we're on 2 YouTube channels, Facebook Live, Periscope, which is Twitter, Twitch, and DLive. You can access these broadcasts by going to www.lostartsradio.com/live for all the links to those channels. The Planetary Healing Club meets right after Lost Arts Radio Live at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Saturday nights. And our Sunday show with guests airs at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Sunday nights on our Blog Talk Radio channel, our YouTube channels, Facebook pages, and on Brighteon. Be sure to sign up for our free email list just in case we do get banned on big tech's platforms. It's just a matter of time, really. They don't like the stuff we talk about, and they do not want the truth out there. In fact, they have already attacked us numerous times. Join our free email list so we can let you know where we are and how to access our shows. The sign-up button is right on the top right on most pages of our website. The best starting point for all things Lost Arts Radio is our main site, lostartsradio.com, where you can find the hottest news selection videos that we curate just for you. Those are on the homepage and added to daily, as well as articles and breaking news about information you really need to know. Our show archives, the 10 most recent shows, are right on our homepage, as well as our Blog Talk Radio page at blogtalkradio.com/lostartsradio, or just click the All Things Radio Show tab right on our website. We're in the podcast directory on iTunes, and all of our shows except the banned ones are on our YouTube channels at Lost Arts Radio and at Diamond Disc. Our Brighteon page is really taking off, and we often have editors' picks videos right on their homepage. Visit brighteon.com/channel/LostArtsRadio. On our site, you can also access our free listener forum as well as sign up for the Planetary Healing Club, which is just $25 a month, where you get private access to a one-on-one interaction with host Richard Sachs and myself and the other club members who participate live. More info can be found at planetaryhealingclub.com. We're providing solutions in there to make the world a better place. Come join us. Stay tuned, because up next, you'll get to hear a really great song by an independent artist that we're doing our best to support. Go to lostartsradio.com/music for the full list of all the great songs and bands that we spin on our audio-only podcast shows. If you're in a band and want to submit a song for consideration for airplay on Lost Arts Radio, visit my website at diamonddiscaudio.com for more information about the music placement, mastering, and mixing work that I do. Thanks again for listening to and supporting Lost Arts Radio. We love having you as part of our family to learn, experience, and grow with.
There are so many things to be, but in the glare of harsh realities, There's too much suffering I see. If you gave me just one wish, only one would work for me. Nothing else could really make much sense. 'Cause Lord, I'd wish that I could heal. Yeah, I'd wish that I could heal. I wish that I could heal. Hiya, hey, hiya, hey, hiya, hey, hiya, hey. Would you wish that you could fly to the moon and back? Or that you could be invisible and live your life and leave no tracks? Or that you'd be the most beautiful and have the world lounge at your feet? I know I'd pass on all of these if I could only learn to heal. Heal the hatred and heal the wars. Clean the slates that hold the scars. Heal the health and all the pain. Heal everything driving us insane. Heal the present, heal the past. Heal the planet so it will last. Heal the marriage that's on the rocks. Heal the hearts encased in locks. Heal the fears that hold you back and help to get your life on track. Heal the government and corporate whores who rob us blind and block the doors. Lord, I'll offer a great deal if you help me learn to heal. That I could heal. I wish that I could heal. Hey, hiya, hey, hiya, hey, hiya, hey, hiya, hey. Would you wish for a peaceful world and a contented heart? Or would you give your wish to someone else and give their lives a brand new start? Would you help every dream come true for any person in the world? You'll do this and so much more if you'll only learn to heal. Hey! Heal the hatred and heal the wars. Clean the slates that hold the scars. Heal the health and all the pain. Heal everything driving us insane. Heal the present and heal the past. Heal the planet so it will last. Heal the marriage that's on the rocks. Heal the heart encased in locks. Heal the fears that hold you back and help to get your life on track. Heal the government and corporate whores who rob us blind and lock the doors. Lord, I'll offer a great deal if you'll teach us how to heal. That we could heal. I wish that I could heal. Hiya, hey, hiya, hey, hiya,